Next Pats podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Great episode lined up for you here. We still are a little ways away from week one, about a week and a half from week one of the NFL regular season, but we wanted to bring in Trey Wingo, now of Pro Football Network, also of the 33rd Team, has a podcast coming out that he wants to tell you about. Great conversation with Trey, who has all sorts of takes on what's going on with the Patriots, what's going on specifically with their quarterback room, which we will get to, as well as the rest of the AFC East. So a lot of fun to do a little divisional check-in with Trey Wingo. But let's start first by talking about the Patriots, their roster, which was just, I hesitate to say finalized, but it was reduced to 53 players. It is their initial roster. As you know by now, listening to this podcast, you know the 53-man roster isn't finalized in late August, early September. It's only just getting started. But so many takeaways when it comes to what the Patriots decided on, and it starts at the quarterback position to me. We've talked so much about this offensive line. We didn't think there would be a move as seismic as this one at the quarterback spot. We did tell you that the Malik Cunningham move would probably be coming, and it did. We'll see if he's able to get back on the practice squad. But the Patriots release Bailey Zappe, and I can tell you, people inside the building were stunned. Had one staffer tell me it was a shocker. It's something that they really didn't foresee, even though they would also acknowledge that he had a difficult summer. But having a difficult summer and remaining the team's backup quarterback versus being removed from the 53-man roster and giving the rest of the league an opportunity to sign Bailey Zappe are two very, very different things. And that's what I think had people blown away in some corners of one Patriot place on Tuesday, because they understand. And let's be clear here, even though in the next hour, as we're recording this, we got a busy day. We got to go to practice. We'll be inside the locker room as well, but we wanted to get a podcast out to you. And whether or not by the time you're listening to this, Bailey Zappe has made his way back to the Patriots practice squad, which I do think is a very real possibility, there remains an issue here. And the Patriots are telling you there's an issue with the Patriots quarterback room. And it's, they don't think they have enough at the backup quarterback spot with Bailey Zappe. Period. If they truly valued him in any meaningful way, i.e. as a legitimate backup quarterback, a critical role on any football team, a role that is in all likelihood more expensive than you might think. You know, you're talking for good backup quarterbacks, you're talking $5 million plus. That's a real role. And we know how critical it is to be able to try to keep a team afloat if the starting quarterback gets hurt. It usually doesn't work out. And the numbers would tell you if you're playing your backup quarterback, you don't have a shot. And maybe the Patriots are really leaning into that thinking. Well, if we got to play him, whether it's him or another backup, we're screwed anyway. So if someone takes him on waivers, if someone claims him and we don't get him back, what's the diff? But this is a really important gig for any NFL team. Billions of dollars poured into this franchise. Robert Kraft looking at his watch, wondering when they're going to get back to the playoffs and make some noise there. And for them to let that guy go, the guy who was supposed to have that job, who had it all summer, let him go with the potential for him never to get back, is a very strong statement in their belief in Bailey Zappe. And again, even if he gets back to the practice squad and he is the number 2 in week 1, I don't think that makes the quarterback conversation moot. And I've heard people describe it that way. Well, if he just gets back on the practice squad and he's the number 2, then what's the diff? No, they're telling you with their actions how they feel about Bailey Zappe. A number of other options for them to release and try to get one of those players back on the practice squad. And they chose Bailey Zappe. Why wasn't it Sean Wade or Amir Speed? You know, players that, listen, I get it. I understand why they're on the 53. Amir Speed has been on my 53 since we started making 53-man roster projections. And I get Shaun Wade based on the lack of depth, honestly, on the boundary at that cornerback position. But they were more willing to let Zappe go than somebody like Shaun Wade. And I understand they have intel. They have feelings about players. Well, we'll be able to get this guy through. We won't be able to get that guy through. And they have more intel than us when it comes to those things. I will grant them that. But you can't be sure, especially this time of year when the rosters are churned so vigorously, so consistently over the first couple of weeks of the regular season. You can't be sure that in the 24-ish hour period, it's a little less than that, it's about 20 hours, between releasing Bailey Zappe and when waiver claims have to be made, you can't tell me you're 100% sure that he's going to make his way back to you. So this is something that, in my opinion, they are trying to address. They will continue to try to address. And even if he makes his way back on the practice squad, again, that may have already happened by the time you're listening to this, they have an issue there. Will be very interesting to see. And here on Next Pats, we try to project forward and say, okay, well, could it be this guy? Could it be that guy? It sounds like Colt McCoy, according to Albert Breer, is of real interest to the Patriots. That's a shrug of the shoulders kind of move to me. I thought Case Keenum would be an interesting one, although digging into it a little bit further, that's another relationship with Bill O'Brien, not to get back to the DeAndre Hopkins conversation, but that's another relationship with Bill O'Brien that's an interesting one. Keenum did briefly play for Bill O'Brien in Houston back in 2014. He then wrote a book later in his career, which was very surprising to me, but he wrote a book. Good for him. More than I can say. and wrote in the book that Bill O'Brien looked across from him, I think, when he was being released from Houston and said, you'll never be anything more than a third string quarterback. And wrote about how that drove him. And he was asked about it later when he was with the Broncos and he was a starting quarterback. And boy, there was a little back and forth there. Bill O'Brien saying, I can honestly say I've never said anything like that to a player before. And Keenum doubling down and saying, no, yeah, you did. And I wrote it exactly the way I remembered. I don't know. A lot of those comments were sandwiched between praise for the other guy, depending on who you were hearing from. So Case Keenum said, I learned a lot of ball from Bill O'Brien and a lot of respect for him. And he taught me a lot. And Bill O'Brien, same thing for Case Keenum. Boy, great career he's had and what a player, and all kinds of respect for him and how he worked. But there's something there. So maybe that's not the best fit for the Patriots. He is still employed. He's the third, unlike Colt McCoy, who's a free agent. Case Keenum is the third string quarterback in Houston. Do you call Nick Caserio, offer a 7th round pick, and try to get Case Keenum in to be the veteran backup to Mac Jones? I would expect both guys would be able to work with each other. You don't have to love the people that you're working with if you feel like it's a good situation for you and it's going to help you at your job. And listen, Keenum goes from being a number 3 somewhere to maybe being a number 2 somewhere. Bill O'Brien gets a more capable backup. That sounds like it could work for me, but the relationship piece to it is a fascinating one. You know, Nick Foles is out there, Carson Wentz. Those would surprise me. My guess is they want someone who's been in a variety of systems, someone who is really going to lean into the backup role the way Brian Hoyer did, and try to help Mac Jones, be a sounding board for Mac Jones. And even if they don't have experience in the Patriots offense, have experience in a variety of different offenses and be thought of as that sort of sage, wise, old backup quarterback that's been in the league and seen some things and can provide real value to somebody like Mac Jones. He's not getting that from Bailey Zappe. The talk about an interesting relationship there. I don't know how much those guys are giving each other. And so, you know, maybe that's something that Bill O'Brien would be looking for as well. And that quarterback room is just an older voice. That's somebody for Mac to really lean on when Bill O'Brien is doing something other than coaching the quarterbacks. That's a huge part of his job. It's clearly not the only part of his job. So we'll see what the Patriots do on that front at that quarterback position. Again, even if Bailey Zappe's back, I wouldn't anticipate them being done for their backup quarterback search. Zappe, a backup? Sure. The backup? It's clear to me they want something different. If they didn't, they wouldn't have released him. Don't want to delve too far into the 53-man roster because, again, there will be changes made. There will be players placed on injured reserve. Players will be brought back. Is Riley Reif go on short-term IR? Same for Tyquan Thornton to free up a few roster spots. Is Ty Montgomery still around? He's a veteran with 4-year service time, and so he does not go through the waiver process. He's eligible to be signed by the Patriots. Maybe he comes back as some depth for the Patriots in that running back room. Would provide a little bit of depth at receiver, I guess, as well. He's somebody who just very clearly needs to be able to stay on the field and stay healthy. He's had such an issue with that. He really hasn't been a consistent contributing NFL player in 5 years or so, maybe even a little bit more than that. But those are the kinds of moves that I would anticipate happening today. We'll see what ends up getting finalized in the next few hours here. But I just wanted to lay out a few of what I would consider most exciting young players. Again, understanding what this podcast is, where our bread is buttered, the young players that are most intriguing to me. And I wrote about this on NBCSportsBoston.com. Let's start with the receivers. Pop Douglas, dynamism personified. That's what he was in practice. To me, he's already their 4th receiver. I think he's going to have a real role right away. I would expect him to be in uniform and contributing, even if he doesn't have much of a role outside of what he does as the 4th receiver, as an interior option. I think he would be the backup punt returner to Marcus Jones. So there's some value there. Maybe they would be even more encouraged to get him into uniform, but really it's what he does with the ball in his hands. He is very hard to bring down because he's so quick. And you saw a little glimpse of it in that Packers game before he got injured, but individual tackling drills and training camp guys, people couldn't touch him. They couldn't catch him. And you're talking about a pretty confined area. If you've ever been out to Patriots training camp and you've watched these drills, they don't give him the full field to work with. It's not like the one-on-ones where he was great as well, but the receivers have a huge advantage there because they're working with about half the field. These tackling drills are not in a phone booth, but not much more than a phone booth. And he's still making people miss. That to me is what screamed, you got to get this guy on the roster, because we saw that on the first couple of days of training camp. Couldn't touch him, couldn't even get an angle on him because he has speed as well as lateral quickness. And it was very clear that he was somebody they would want to keep around. He's number 1. Kayshon Boutte is number 2. And now he's different in that I'm not sure he's on the week 1 game day roster. That's going to require some injuries, in my opinion. So even if Tyquan Thornton isn't available, would they be comfortable just going with 4 receivers there and maybe leaving Kayshon Boutte as a healthy scratch? I could see that happening. But injury histories are what they are for guys like Juju Smith-Schuster and Devontae Parker. One of those guys goes down early in the season, along with Tyquan Thornton. All of a sudden, Kayshon Boutte's up and he has a real role. And his body control and hands have really been what stood out to me. Bill Belichick praised his explosiveness the other day. I trust him on that front. He obviously would know. But it hasn't necessarily been his athleticism that has wowed me. It's his coordination and his ability to catch everything thrown his way. He's been very, very good in that regard in practices. And so he deserves a spot on the 53, as we've talked about on podcasts past. Let's give Sam Roberts a shout out. Cliff Harris Award winner, best non-Division I defensive player in college football out of Northwest Missouri State a couple of years ago. Great story. 6th round pick, somebody who is going to take a few years to get anything close to his ceiling based on where he's coming from in the college ranks. And to me, he really has improved since last year. And he even contributed a bit last year, played in 5 games. But I think he could end up having a real role early this season. He's gotten stronger. To me, it looks like he's gotten quicker. Maybe that's just because he's a little bit more decisive in understanding his responsibilities and his techniques. But man, this guy has improved. There's no question. And again, coming from where he came from, now getting the coaching that he's getting, maybe you don't see the full Sam Roberts until 2024, 2025, but they've got something here in this guy. And so I think you have to be excited for him, again, given where he's coming from and understanding his road. pretty fun story there from Sam Roberts. And you saw it in some of these preseason games. He played well in practice consistently, but for him to be making as many plays as he's making, hustle plays, plays in the run game, plays in the pass game, chasing people down from behind. This guy's 6'5", 300 pounds. This is a large human. And he has some real athletic ability, and he has a real motor as well, which Bill Belichick would appreciate. Antonio Mafi made the list for me just because, especially if he has to play week 1 now. He's been the top left guard fill-in for Cole Strange. Who knows if Strange is really ready to go against the Eagles? And even if he is ready to go, is he fully ready to go? Or is there a platoon situation happening because Cole Strange just doesn't have his legs where he wants them quite yet? In a game plan where the Patriots may just want to run the ball, kill clock, keep it out of Jalen Hurts' hands, that's the kind of game plan that Antonio Mafi would want, in my opinion, because his strength is his strength. It's moving forward. That's what Bill Belichick used to say about Dan Copeland, but it's moving forward, leaning on people, big body guy, former defensive tackle at UCLA. We've talked about him on the pod before, but in that kind of game plan, in that style of game, I think he could be really good. And I think there's a chance, again, if he ends up playing week 1, and if they're able to move the ball, it'll be behind that big left side, Trent Brown and Antonio Mafi. It's a lot of weight to be able to lean on defensive linemen. I know the Eagles have a great defensive line, but if they're able to move it on the ground, it'll be behind those two. Then that could be some fun to watch. Wrote about Chad Ryland too. Again, you can read the story on NBCSportsBoston.com. He ends up winning the job, which I think is no small feat. I know he's a 4th round pick. He wasn't going to lose his job, but the fact that he won the overall kicking job, not just kickoffs, but place kicking as well, when Nick Folk was in the building, and beloved as Nick Folk is, not just by teammates, but by Bill Belichick, that to me says something about Ryland. So good for him on that front. He'll be a kickoff weapon as well, because he has the big leg, but he has the ability to do some creative things with the football in those situations too. New world now with the fair catches inside the 25, you bring it out to the 25 automatically. Are they going to try to play with that a little bit? Are we going to see more squib kicks, more sort of mortar kicks, different styles, kicking it away from people, hoping that it rolls around on the ground for a little bit? Those are the kinds of things that we've seen him do. So another interesting rookie, you know about Christian Gonzalez, you know about Keon White, you know about Martin Mapu. These guys are going to have roles. And I do think Mapu will have a role. That's somebody you haven't been able to see a whole lot of in preseason, but I think as a sub linebacker, that I know he played more safety in that preseason game the other night, but when he's been working with the regulars in practices, it's been as a sub linebacker, as a running backs coverage option, a tight ends coverage option, and playing more at that second level than really the deep part of the field. When he was out there with the 3s and the 4s, that's when he was playing safety. So it didn't surprise me that we saw him again with some of those players in Tennessee in that preseason finale play at safety, because when he'd been out there with those guys, that's where he was. But once you get Jawan Bentley out there and, maybe Jelani Tavai and the starting defensive line and the starting secondary, that's when he kicked down to the second level. So watch out for that week 1 against the Eagles. All right. That's it for roster chatter. Thanks so much for listening, guys. You're going to want to hear this conversation with Trey Wingo, though. Guy's great. He was a fountain of knowledge on all things AFC East and bringing some outside perspectives to what's going on with this Patriots locker room as well, and how he views Bill Belichick. These are all things that I know you're going to want to hear from Trey Wingo. So without further ado, let's get to Trey. All right, there he is. Very happy to have with us now Trey Wingo, Pro Football Network, also 33rd Team. And Trey, you've got podcasts as well, a couple of podcasts. Tell us about those, if you could, please, before we get started on the Patriots and the Bailey Zappe and where is he now and all that other good stuff.
Yeah, good to be with you. Thanks for that. Yeah, working with Pro Football Network, 33rd Team. Just announced a new podcast with Amazon Wondery called Making Waves, which is essentially what happens. It's a sliding door effect, like the movie with Gwyneth Paltrow a long time ago. One scene, she gets on the train and her life takes off one direction. The other one, she misses the train, her life goes in another direction. So it's like what if moments happen in sports and historical things that happen around sport that sort of affected it. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, people need to keep their eye out for that. Is it something they can subscribe to already, Trey, or is it something that's coming down the pipe?
It's coming up in a couple of weeks. And also Mark Schlereth and I do a weekly show on the Stunt app, which is basically Twitter without all the BS. It's just sports. There's nothing else in there. So you can download the Stunt app at the Apple Store or Google Play, depending on what your device is.
Amazing concept. I think people have been clamoring for that for, right? I don't know,
something.
10 years now, maybe. So great stuff. And when the pod gets started, we'll be sure to mention it here and we'll steer people that way. But we're so excited to have you on with us now because there's a lot going on with this Patriots team, with the division. Just want to pick your brain on all things AFC East really right now. But let's start with, I saw your tweet. It was about an hour ago. We're recording this on, the days are running together. It's Wednesday morning. About an hour ago, you tweeted that classic John Travolta meme of him looking around an empty room. Yeah. And you said Mac Jones right now, because we know Bailey Zappe's gone. Malik Cunningham, who had a lot of people around here excited with what he did in the preseason, is gone. What do you make of what the Patriots are trying to do with their quarterback room right now? Because we're having a heck of a time trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I saw somebody respond, is Bill going to play? I'm like, he's going to have somebody before the season starts. Like there's a process here. There's so many players that are going to be cut and some surprise quarterbacks that have already been cut. So they're evaluating this. I've also heard that they're going to try and bring Bailey back if he clears waivers and maybe put him on the practice squad and take off from there. But there will be more than one quarterback on the Patriots roster. But it's clearly an indication that whatever controversy there was about Mac Jones and whether or not the pick was justifiable of taking him in the 2021 draft in 2022, that has been put to bed because he is clearly going to be the guy going forward.
Don't you think, too, it is some sort of commentary on Zappe himself, Trey? Because if they're willing to let him go in this way and make him available to the rest of the league, they have to be, and maybe they've got great intel that he's going to get through waivers and they're going to be able to put him back on the practice squad. But I have to imagine you can never be completely sure that the guy's actually going to make his way back to you. So they had to be comfortable to some extent with him not getting back to them ever again.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you wouldn't do that if you were 100% certain about what he could be, right? I mean, that's just the obvious scenario here. You wouldn't expose yourself that way if your convictions were as strong as some people maybe thought they were. So clearly they're like, hey, if this happens, great. If it doesn't, we'll find another way to move on. But you're right. I think it is an indication of what their true evaluation of what Bailey Zappe is, as opposed to what it could be going forward.
Do you feel like you have a true evaluation of what the Patriots could be going forward this year in 2023? I've sort of stuck on the fact that I just kind of view them as a 500-ish team, 8-9 wins, somewhere in there. But what is your view of New England this year?
Well, I think if you're just doing an honest evaluation based on everything we know before the season starts, because weird things happen every year, like just strange things happen every year, and you have to accept that. But divisional realignment took place in the NFL in 2002, when we have the current division format setup that we have. This is without a doubt the first time since divisional realignment that the Patriots go into week one as the fourth best team in their own division. I mean, that's just an honest way to assess it. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to finish there. Strange things always happen. We have no idea if Tua can stay healthy. Something's not right in Buffalo. They don't seem to be just together on all fronts, but an honest evaluation of the rosters, just an evaluation, you'd have to put the other three teams in the AFC East ahead of the Patriots going into week one. And that has never happened before since divisional realignment.
Do you still see Bill Belichick as somebody who could take a team like that and elevate it to the point where maybe it does surprise us by season's end? Or I think for a lot of people, especially here locally, Trey, last year really has shaken people's confidence in Bill to a degree with the whole offensive setup and what they did with Mac Jones in year two. Are you in that camp as well? Or do you still at this point in Bill's career view him as that guy who can get this team to a higher level, even if right now we're not expecting that?
I think certainly he can, right? But if we're being honest about it, Bill's own words tell you what he thinks about it. You remember at the NFL owners meetings, someone asked him, what do you say to Patriots fans? And I don't remember if it was you guys or somebody, the Patriot fans who were a little concerned about the way things are going. And his answer was the most un-Bill Belichick thing ever, which was, I'd say the last 25 years should put your mind to rest. When has Bill ever been a backwards-looking guy instead of a forward-looking guy, right? That was always, we're on to Cincinnati, the infamous line after the blowout in Kansas City on Monday Night Football, which you guys went on to win the Super Bowl that year. And Bill has never been, look what I've done. It's always, look where we're going. And I thought simultaneously that answer from him was truthful and disingenuous at the same time, because that doesn't matter anymore, because Tom Brady isn't there anymore. And I think it's an unfair evaluation to look at Brady's post-Patriots career and Belichick's post-Brady career, because Tom Brady walked into a perfect scenario in Tampa. I mean, they had, outside of a 30-30 season from Jameis Winston, 30 touchdown passes and 30 interceptions, they were a really good team with a lot of great offensive weapons. And then they added Gronk and they added Antonio Brown. Like, you better be good in that scenario. So I don't look at it that way, but I think this is going to be one of the most important seasons in Bill Belichick's New England career. Since Brady left, 2020 COVID season, disaster, Cam Newton missed the playoffs. They take Mac Jones in 2021, they get back into the postseason, and they get blown out in a wild card game in Buffalo against a team in their own division. And last year, they missed the playoffs. That's not going to sit well with Robert Kraft if this continues, especially as we said, going into the season, they are clearly 4-4. That doesn't mean they're going to end up there. I'm just saying, you look at an evaluation of the roster, that's where they are. So there's some pressure on Bill, I believe, for this season to be something going forward than maybe there's been since his first couple of years as a head coach.
And maybe because Bill O'Brien's in the mix now, Bill Belichick doesn't have to spend as much time on the offensive side of things. He can be that floater of a head coach that he was for a long, long time here. I think helped make him great at perceiving what's happening with his team, big picture, and allowed him to make some of those difficult choices. But you're right, that comment about last 25 years have been pretty good. It's every once in a while, Trey, you hear him sort of slip it in some way. I call it a slip. A few years ago at the end of the season, a reporter asked him, what do you say? I think she was from People magazine. This was not, the Globe or the Herald. This was
rule number one. Don't have a People magazine reporter asking Bill Belichick a football question, right? That's never going to end well. It's never going to end well.
And here's the thing. It really wasn't a football question. It was sort of and I think even she could sort of sense it. It might have been what ended up being Brady's last game.
Yeah.
And she said something to the effect of, what do you say to the fans who've been with you through thick and thin?
Yeah.
And he shot right back. He said, I don't think there's been a whole lot of thin around here.
Yeah, I remember.
And so, he does have those moments where he wants to remind people, hey, we did it really well here for a long, long time. Don't forget, I am that guy. Maybe he can get back to bringing that team back to where we're used to seeing them. I'm with you. I don't see it being this year. Get ready for NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NBCSB and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support, Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, or Virginia. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit www.mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming or visit www.1800gambler.net in West Virginia.
How about the rest of the division, Trey? Are you in the camp of folks who look at Buffalo and they wonder what's happening in Buffalo? Because you had the whole saga with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen and Sean McDermott saying it's a big deal, then coming back the next day and saying, no, I didn't mean that. Everything's fine. Do you look at them as sort of a team that is in any way teetering, or should they be the wire-to-wire #1 team in the division here?
Well, I think they've earned the right to be the favorite going into the season. based on the last 3 or 4 years. But I am in that camp that something is not right. Okay. There's just something about Buffalo this year that just doesn't feel as comfortable as it has, say, the last 3 seasons. And for all their success that Buffalo has had, and for all the talent that they have in this incredible run that they've been on, their best since the years that they went to 4 straight Super Bowls, from Super Bowls 25 to Super Bowl 28. They have one AFC Championship game appearance to show for it. I mean, that's it. They have one appearance in a championship game to show for it, in the game in which they had a 10-point lead against Kansas City, ended up losing by double digits. That's not good enough for what this team can be. And I am a little concerned because the division is by far the toughest it's been since they've sort of had their rejuvenation. You have the Von Miller situation, which he's going to be out for 4 games, starting at least 4 games, missing 4 games because of the pup. And look, for a guy like Von Miller as a veteran, that might be the best thing in the world. You want him rested and ready down the stretch. But that's buying into the premise that he'll be what he was before he got injured last Thanksgiving. There's nothing to indicate that we know that for certain. There is an uneasiness, despite what everyone says, between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And by any measure, by any statistical measurement, Josh Allen regressed last year. They also have the second fewest rushing touchdowns in the NFL since 2018. They have struggled to find a complementary running game that doesn't have the jersey 17 on it. Josh Allen is their running game as well as their passing game. Those are concerns. The defense, which a couple of years ago in that epic comeback by Kansas City, I think that year they were the number 1 overall defense, the number 1 third down defense, and the number 1 passing defense. And Mahomes still blitzed him for 300 plus yards and 4 touchdown passes in that epic overtime win where they botched the kickoff in 13 seconds and how they should have handled it. So I think Buffalo fans don't want to hear it, but I think there are real reasons to be wondering, have we missed our opportunity here in Buffalo? And they'll be relevant as long as Josh Allen is there. But have we seen the peak of this current nucleus? I think that might be a possibility.
So hard to maintain. I mean, I think those of us that watch the Patriots so closely for so long take that for granted, that it is hard to stay atop the mountain. And as long as you have the right quarterback, it's a little easier than it is for most others, but it's still not easy, period. Mm-mm. And so it'll be interesting to see if they can stay at the top of the division here. I don't know if you've watched much Hard Knocks, Trey, this year, but I'm curious if Hard Knocks has in any way impacted your opinion of the Jets, because for me, there has been a lot of Aaron Rodgers praise. Let's put it kindly and just call it praise from the coaching staff. And I get it. I understand he's been in the league a long time. He knows a lot of football, but it just feels like it has been, one long party that they were able to acquire this guy. And I wonder how long you can sort of sustain those feelings and that player coach dynamic. But how have you viewed what's gone on in Jersey down there?
Well, first of all, and I've been talking about this with a couple of former Jets, it's not Hard Knocks. They might as well rename the show I Love Aaron. Okay. Like,
exactly.
I hear the I Love Lucy theme every time I watch Hard Knocks, not the Hard Knocks theme. And I get it. I get why you would do that for HBO's perspective, because you're trying to sell the narrative of the star. But remember, all this stuff the Jets get to sign off on. Okay. And they've signed off on this. And you're right, it's been a love affair. And we are in a honeymoon with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And, there was the shot of him with Miles Teller and the actors from Ozark at the Taylor Swift concert singing to the camera. All of this is great, but it doesn't mean bleep if they don't win, right? Like a couple of years ago, was it 2015, 2016, the Packers got off to a rough start, and Aaron went on our radio station and said, everybody needs to relax, relax. And people in Green Bay say, yeah, okay, I get that. You know what they'll say in New York? F off. We don't want to hear that. You're supposed to be the difference maker, man. Their schedule is very difficult. It's a very difficult start to the season. So I'm curious to see what happens. Let's say they start 2-4, 2-3, 3-4, 3-5. What happens then? Because there's not a more, of course, everything is going to go wrong fan base than the New York Jets. Maybe the Chargers, who infamously in 2010 had the number 1 offense and the number 1 defense statistically and somehow missed the playoffs. But there's never been a fan base that says, well, of course we're going to F it up. Like as soon as they signed Aaron Rodgers, one of my friends, Stu Gatz from the Dan Le Batard show, says, well, of course I'm expecting this to not go well because historically it hasn't. So it should work. Like everything should be in place except for the offensive line. They've got a great defense. Garrett Wilson is a Devontae Adams type receiver for Aaron. I think the running game is going to be solid. The defense is going to be good. The offensive line is going to be problematic. But their schedule is brutal, and there's no other like standard than a Super Bowl. It doesn't have to be this year, but it has to be when Aaron Rodgers is there. Like Peyton Manning went to Denver and they had the number 1 seed in 2012, and then they flamed out when they blew the coverage against Joe Flacco and the Ravens to that long pass to was it Jacoby Jones? Yeah, in the divisional round, they blew that game in overtime. Tom Brady to the Buccaneers. That's what this has to be. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, and the trade is not a success for the New York Jets.
It's so interesting because Brady has sort of created what he did in Tampa Bay, created that, in my opinion, sort of unrealistic standard for Aaron Rodgers in this situation now, because boy, to go from where the Jets were to what they're considered to have the potential to be able to do now is so massively, massively different. And I just don't see Rodgers as the same kind of player as Brady, right? Like Brady could take over the Bucs and he could be quarterback and head coach in some ways, an offensive coordinator, and assistant general manager essentially. I don't know if Rodgers will be able to rally the troops, so to speak, in the same way. Do you feel like he has that in him, Trey, to be that guy that Brady was for Tampa? He really changed the whole culture. I don't know if Rodgers will be that sort of transformative figure.
Well, to your point, I mean, that year that the Bucs won the Super Bowl, they started 7-5. I mean, remember Brady thought it was he thought it was a 4th down on the Monday night loss to the Bears.
That was the only time he ever looked
confused.
Oh boy.
But it was after that game that basically Brady said, screw this offense that you guys want to run. Here's what I want to run. Right. And he basically said, this is what we're going to do. Mark Murphy, the longtime president of the Packers, had one of the greatest lines ever about Aaron Rodgers. He's a complicated fella. I mean, like he's not a Tom Brady. Hey guys, this is what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to. He just sort of wants to do his own thing. And you're right. I'm not sure it's in his DNA to do those kind of things. Maybe he's willing to turn over a new leaf as he approaches 40, and that's certainly possible. But you're right. Like one of the great stories about Tom, which I'm sure you heard, is when they were playing a pickup basketball game against Foxborough policemen and firefighters, and they were losing. And Brady was like, we're not losing to a bunch of policemen and firefighters, and he made sure they won that game, which meant nothing, but that's who Brady is. And I'm not like the other night when the Raiders were playing the Cowboys and he said, go ruin their night. That's who it is. And I'm not sure that we've seen that side of Aaron over his career in terms of lifting everybody up. And that's what's going to have to happen here.
For the Dolphins, is it as simple as long as Tua is healthy, they have a chance and they could be a playoff team and they can make a little run here? Or are there other complicating factors in your opinion?
Well, it starts and ends with Tua. I mean, there's no question about it. One of the reasons we talked about the Patriots being the 4th best team is they have the 4th best quarterback in the division right now by any measurable standard. And that's not a knock on Mac. That's just listing the accomplishments of the players ahead of him. Okay. Tyreek Hill had close to 2,000 yards with Tua missing 4 or 5 games last year. So the idea of Tua being healthy, which is a huge stretch, and having Waddle and Hill and basically a bastardized version of Kyle Shanahan's running attack there with Mike McDaniel is pretty impressive. I will say this, the thing that nobody talks about with the Dolphins that I think is going to have the biggest impact on the team outside of Tua staying healthy is Vic Fangio running the defense. If you go look at the splits last year for the Dolphins defensively, they were tremendous at home and really average to below average on the road. Vic Fangio is going to fix that. Like even when he couldn't win in Denver against the Chiefs, and they've lost 14 straight games to Kansas City, their defense in Denver played Mahomes and the Chiefs tougher than any other defense in that division. So the stabilizing factor, I think, of Fangio on defense combined with the hopeful health of Tua gives Miami fans a lot of hope. I will say this though, in talking about this with you, if you're a Patriots fan, the one thing you can be happy about is that there are little question marks about every team. Will Aaron be what the Jets need him to be. Something is or isn't really right with the Bills, and Tua's health is a huge question mark. So that's kind of the hope going forward, is that all these little things might be big things when it comes to playing out the division in the AFC East.
Oh, Trey, don't get you know that our listeners, they have already gone through those little things over and over and over again in their heads on social media. What about this? What about that? This team's third corner is having a hard camp. That's just sort of where Patriots fans are, and it just sort of is a commentary on where the division is overall. Great to pick your brain on the AFC East. Great to pick your brain on the Patriots. I want to hear from you because I know if you're following Trey on Twitter or have for a long time, he loves Hawaii, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk to us about maybe a way to help the people of Hawaii after dealing with the Maui wildfires.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maui's been in our lives for a quarter of a century. We live there half the year. We consider it home. And just the devastation it's hard to put into words. An entire city has just been wiped off the map. And historically, for the Hawaiian people and their culture, it's the most important city in all of the Hawaiian Islands. I mean, when King Kamehameha was ruling the islands, that was the capital of the kingdom. And there's two really great ways that have been put together where funds go directly to the people that are affected by this. It's MauiUnitedWay.org and HawaiiCommunityFoundation.org. Look, any way you want to donate, whether it's Red Cross or however you want to do it, it's great. But the easiest way to get goods and services into the people who desperately need it as fast as possible would be MauiUnitedWay.org and HawaiiCommunityFoundation.org. And, it's real easy. Sometimes we move on. There's a hurricane affecting Florida and hope everything is fine there. But this was one of the most devastating natural disasters in the history of this country. And, it's easy to sort of forget about a beautiful Hawaiian island someplace away, but the people are really hurting. And anything anybody can spare would be greatly appreciated. As we say on the islands, so much mana, which is just an appreciation and love for the things that are coming their way.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Trey. And we will definitely get the links to those places that you mentioned in our comment section on YouTube. You'll find it on Apple Podcasts as well if you go and search Next Pat. So I will make sure that people can find their way there. Trey Wingo, thank you so much for being with us. This has been great. We'll have to do it again soon.
Anytime, man. Always good to talk to you.
All right, great stuff there from Trey. And if you can, please help the people of Maui. Great to hear from Trey on that. Obviously, it's a huge part of his life. He's there all the time and looking to help his community there. So again, we will leave the information necessary on YouTube. You can find it in the show notes there. Same deal, Apple Podcasts. If you're looking for a way to help out the people of Maui, that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks so much again to Trey for opening his gigantic football brain for us in this conversation here today. Thanks to you for listening. Please rate, comment, subscribe if you haven't done that already. We're approaching week 1, trying to grow this thing as much as we can and then hit the ground running once the games actually start. Again, we'll have more conversation on the roster building next week once things get a little bit more settled. Maybe we'll take a look ahead at what's next for the Patriots because they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. We've got all kinds of Eagles resources, boots on the ground down there in Philadelphia. So it'd be great to hear about that matchup and how the Eagles have been looking during their training camp because they really haven't played all of their guys during preseason. So even if you're going back to the preseason, you don't have a great understanding of what they actually are as a football team right now. So that's worth diving into for us. We still have some college football stuff that we want to do here. So we've got to find some time for that as well. We'll find time for all of it because we love it and we love you. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you next week.